It's better questions, better insights, where we dig underneath what seems like a sensible question to see if there's greater value underneath. Insight Hunter, Dr. Norman Chorn, joins me today. I'm Ashton Bishop. Let's go, Norman. How do Agile companies evaluate roles and rewards accordingly if roles are constantly changing? Is that the right question?
It's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question.
Because there's no doubt about it, Agile really implies the ability to move fairly quickly to respond. I'm not sure, though, you want to evaluate the roles and reward that a person gets.
Yes.
But rather be clear about the core strategy that the business is trying to achieve, and asking yourself, what contribution does that person make to our achievement of the actual core strategy or the value proposition? Because often I find that in Agile strategies, there's sometimes a loss of vision on what the ultimate outcome is. People are just so busy responding and reacting that often, the plot can be lost.
Yeah, and I think anchoring back onto purpose, I think that's the key thing. I think maybe the better question from my point of view here is that, do we have the right people on the bus, and do we know where the bus is going? Purpose. And I go to Daniel Pink's work now. It was a DC and Ryan, obviously, but it was purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So I think the question here is, are our people aligned with purpose? Do they have autonomy, and are they moving towards mastery? Because that goes to intrinsic motivation. And I think the question, or layered within that question, is potentially the old school job description and incentivization. And I think that's now been proven by science not to work, not to be effective. And I think we need to say, do we have the right people? Do we know where the bus is going? Purpose. And then do we line up across purpose, mastery, and autonomy?
Yeah, and I think that brings into focus another problem with the question as it currently stands, because Agile is often interpreted from a very internal perspective.
Yes.
In the same way as, really focusing on job descriptions and roles and all those internal measures. What Agile really needs to be doing a lot more of is anticipating what the future conditions are going to be, understanding the future. And so if you really think aligning your people with purpose is part of what we need to be looking at, then the question is, how do we take our people along on the journey to understand this future and where we want to head in the future as well?
And I think if people are aligned on that purpose and future vision, the question then becomes discretionary effort. I mean, that's the game when you're thinking about high-performing teams. Have I unlocked discretionary effort within my team? And when it just back to rewards, sort of, if then rewards are less powerful than now that rewards, right? If people are focused on, if I do this, then I'm going to get that, I think the surprise of really keeping teams engaged, I think is potentially more interesting.
And it's an interesting lesson that I think was partially forgotten during the lockdowns in COVID.
Yes.
Where companies became obsessed with, are people actually working, just because they weren't in the office?
Yes.
And so there were these tendencies to check up on, were they logged on, were they doing what they were meant to do, rather than making it very clear what is it we're trying to do here in the situation, and giving them the discretionary room, the elbow room, if you like, to really make that discretionary effort.
And that's the tension, because the more that people focus in on the accountability of what's required, the less discretionary effort they get, and the more resistance builds up.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, of course, is the more tightly you control the processes, the more fragile the company becomes, the less ability it has to really kind of work out emerging responses to changing circumstances.
And a more fragile company is a less agile company.
And more fragile is less agile. Very good.